Alright, babies. Video number 2. Haha. We plant the tree from its roots. We don't get the roots and the other parts and sew them together. Right. Alright, so if I'm not mistaken, this is more from a Buddhist thing. Fuck man, this is way too long ago, but I love the concept of me having to go back in order to like consider what I wrote. So, so I think what I'm trying to explain here, or at least what I'm trying to point out, is that everything has to grow from you instead of be appended to you. Appending is a good word. Uh, Probably started kind of considering this when I was trying to force something to actually exist in my life. Uh, what phase was it? It was like last a couple of months ago. What was I going through? I was going through manifesting. I was going through working. I was going through writing. I was going through YouTubing. I would want, so I love this because like I think just if you just stare at a tree, you get to kind of experience the wholeness of life in every single moment differently if you just look at a tree. And here I'm pointing that we plant the tree from its roots, as in like partially the initial thing that starts kind of showing up is basically the connection that the tree has to, and this kind of allegory is the actual ground. But but looking at myself, like the grounded part of me is as important as the part that's kind of like revealing itself to the world. And in a way, every single time we're trying to kind of like add something to our life, effectively, we need to consider instead of just bringing it to us, reaching out to it, because that's how roots kind of like spread, right? And ultimately, the idea that I'm trying to express here is like we don't really get roots, connect them together, and then to a stump or whatever that could look like, and it becomes a tree. You actually have to like plant the seed and have everything kind of like start feeding each other. And it's funny because even like if you look at the small seed when it's planted, the first things you notice after a couple of months is like it's a trunkish thing coming up with a few leaves and roots that you don't notice underground. And so effectively that's our journey, right? Because we kind of like start as something and we start kind of like our roots kind of like dive in to grab the beliefs that allow us to kind of like grow and bear the flowers and fruits that we want kind of like the world to see and come interact with. It's sad, not a lot of people interact with a tree just because it's there. Most people would want to kind of like interact with what the tree has to offer, or at the very least, the visible part of what it has to offer, the captivating part, which is the flower. And I feel all of us kind of like lose ourselves in trying to kind of like bear some kind of fruit without realizing that, without realizing the kind of fruits we're able to kind of like fully nurture. That's fucking deep, right? So going back to the concept of reaching out to something, extending ourselves to it instead of like bringing it to us. Because extending ourselves to it is kind of like creating that path that allows it to kind of exist harmoniously with us. It's it's like the branches coming out to the sun. It's the same thing, right? Because you can't get branches and connect them to a trunk and then kind of like have a tree. Yeah, but if a tree already has roots, then the branches kind of like would still work. So maybe when it comes to our creativity, we can add something and then have it grow through us. But when it comes to our essence, it always has to extend from us first. Has there been a case where people kind of like connected roots of a tree to another tree and the roots kind of like worked? Does that make sense for some reason? Why would we want to do that? Or why would that actually be a rational approach to planting trees? I have no idea. It's probably something I'd have to research. But ideally, it's very much it's the effort that we take in trying to nurture ourselves with things that don't really work is exhaustive effort that kind of is effort that depletes us from our energy, and chances are it would affect us negatively. So there are two sides of this. There's like, no, why am I spending my energy to actually like try to connect something to me that doesn't get that's not coming out of me. And the other part is, even if I connect it, I need to kind of like harmoniously learn how to exist with it, which makes it a lot easier for me to extend it as a part of myself from the beginning before even connecting it, or extend my way to it from the beginning. So that way, the extension is a part of me. It's already harmonious, and when I grasp onto it, I just kind of like capitalize on it. So, a virtual setting, my mind is literally trying to like expand roots in a certain direction and kind of like call on the nutrients that I might need in order to grow properly. That's how I'm looking at it. And I feel like most of the time we don't really operate as, so the core of us, right? Because I'm talking about roots. We don't really operate as a piece of a puzzle. But everything else on the outside actually could be a piece of a puzzle that we're just kind of like, but again, like you have to extend to get it, or you extend to a place where it can actually work with you. It's practically the same. Or you can add something to yourself that eventually extends to bring that about. That also works. So again, like I'm literally looking at the tree and I'm imagining grafting right now and imagining rooting and I'm imagining all kinds of stuff. Like I worked with like plants for a while and I was very much like into agriculture. I still am. I love this shit. Uh, I think, no, I think I realized at one point that like the entirety of society only exists because of the fuel that kind of like feeds it. And the one thing that feeds it are the farmers. Everything else is just basically the concepts that human beings decided to interact with. So our essence is the rooting system that handles the storm. Because an entire tree can break in half and then regrow simply because its roots are still there. But once you kind of fuck with the roots, then basically the tree will not have a space to actually like, there's no more tree. And that's us, right? Because we are literally our center is the root system. And our body is basically what we express to the world. Our expression is basically the leaves, the branches, all kinds of things that we reach and try to kind of like engage with. Overall, it's very fascinating. I think it's not the fascinating part. I think it's arrogant to see ourselves, our personally on the inside, as different pieces built together instead of one piece reaching to everything else. Maybe that's the fragmentation that we always kind of like face, especially when we're approaching things that are not really in harmony with us. It's because we never really built the root system to handle them. And maybe the reason why I actually like wrote this was because at a time I felt like there's a lot that I wanted to do and I could be doing, but I didn't feel like I was doing it. But the truth is, I was kind of like prepping for them to exist easier on me. And it's fascinating how the mind works, right? Because the mind represents your feelings most than everything else, and it uses the words that you're always kind of like used to using. And if anything, maybe I felt shattered or basically fragmented at that time because I was forcing something, or because something was being forced, or there was pressure of some sorts. Maybe it's because, well, be it because like I was looking for work, or I wasn't able to like communicate with my friends, and I felt like I was doing a whole lot of things differently than I would normally do to actually like appeal to their like interest in order not to feel some kind of way. But the truth is, bringing something and trying to like make it my own didn't seem to work unless I actually started in its direction and then eventually created it from my own perspective until it became something as a part of me instead of something that's for me. And I feel that's what I was trying to explain here because ultimately, with everything, you kind of have to like, the more you kind of like detail your existence around it, detail its existence around you, the more it comes naturally from you and the more it extends as a part of your expression. It's a video.